got the bottles on without any problem. Just it wasn't even. It was a joke. It just went right through. I mean, there wasn't even. Right. So that went through. But then we decided to be smarter to go on the Plus program, and so we got all of our drinks for free. So we kept the good stuff. When we got off the boat, we had another 4 days. So we drank it. Then we partied, drinking it, you know, in these big chalets and everything.
So how much was the Plus program?
Plus program was all of your drinks up to $15. That was $420. We took advantage of it. But we also got two. We also got 2 dinners out of it. Upgraded dinners too, and a bunch of other stuff. You know, and then all the coffees. Yeah, but I'm getting coffees every morning. You know. So we took advantage of it.
You know what? It's my son's.
And it's, you know, the cruises are cheap. You're going to do it just, you know, and it was so much easier not having to worry about it. Thinking, oh, what am I going to bring? We just did it.
I'm good, how are you? Because he can beat me out. Did you want some? No, I said I was going. Anita has to come across too. Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
And the weather kept up. It wasn't perfect weather, but it was horrible.
We did it years ago. It was the same thing.
We were really, really lucky. But it was spectacular. We really, really enjoyed it. We saw almost every animal you could think of. Tons of all.
You can have it. Oh, yeah.
Tons of all. We saw a bear. We saw a moose. We saw a moose with its horns was totally white.
I gave you.
No, I don't know what it was, but you see a lot of them, a lot of the pictures. I don't know what that was. We were hoping I didn't get up at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock.
I know, I'm like, we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, said it was going to be a beautiful night. It was a perfect night, but they didn't come out. And we saw stars and everything, and it just didn't come out.
Yeah, I know, that's
And some people paid for an excursion to go, you know, like 2 hours further north.
get out of the cloud.
Yeah, but they never got it. They never got it either, you know, so. It's just one of those phenomena.
And a lot of it in your PowerPoint. In the PowerPoint. No, it's plenty.
In Iceland,
That's pretty much about the same parallel, isn't it?
Right.
It's further north than Alaska.
Twice a year.
We'll see what happens on that one.
I mean, but is it on the same parallel north? Is it in the Arctic Circle? Really? I think it's still below it.
And my husband.
Yeah. Because I know that where we were, Fairbanks was close to that. So, and that's further, that's, you know,
I told
that was a sweet airport to go in and out. Here, get on the plane. Okay, good.
he's a glutton for punishment. That's the nice thing about living that long. I've never been. There you go. Yeah. I know. Great.
and change real quick. You want to exchange? You lost it?
Do you want me to just,
Let's send John home for
do you want me to
She
just,
up. She up there.
get you a
Sure.
sticker to put on here? No, I just gave you one about a month or two. Yeah. You got it.
Kick back the light.
Yeah, Jane's not real keen on cruises anymore. That's what I heard. It's questionable whether she wants to take it with your sister now. But I gotta say, a lot of people were calling me on that shit.
It's going.
Welcome, everyone, to the Planning and Zoning meeting, September 17, 2024. First, we will call to order and do the opening ceremonies. We call to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Board Member Morganelli. Board Member Broker. Board Member Johnson.
Here.
Board Member Weiss.
Here.
Chairman Arlano.
Here. Mr. Weiss, are you coming up? Do you want to do the indication? We put you on the spot?
Let's pray. Almighty and ever-living God, we do well always and everywhere to give you thanks and praise, and we're especially grateful for the gift of this night, this place, this time, this gathering of persons, both professional and visitors. Pour out the Holy Spirit of blessing upon each and every one, guide, guard, direct, protect them, and help each one. This we do pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, so first we have the approval of the minutes. Everybody have a chance to look at them? All those in favor? Motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Okay, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So next is the public hearing and the ordinance and resolution for resolution number 2023-87. I'm going to recluse myself on this one and give the chair over to Board Member Johnson. I'll be right there.
Resolution 2023-87, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Montverde, Florida, granting a conditional use permit in a R1L single-family low-density zoning district in the Town of Montverde to permit an outdoor storage business for boats, RVs, and trailers on the herein described property, generally located at Fosgate Road and Ridgewood Avenue, Montverde, Florida, owned by Parque Verde LLC, providing for conditions, providing for an expiration date, and providing for an effective date. So as you know from previous discussions, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, and so you're going to be serving in your quasi-judicial roles. You must base your decision on competent, substantial evidence that's in the record and apply your findings to the standards that are set forth in the code. You'll follow established uniform procedure for a quasi-judicial hearing this evening. So you have to disclose any ex parte communications that you have, and that's anything in writing or verbally, or if you visited the site, any communications relating to this application. You'll need to disclose who you spoke to. If you have copies of if it's in writing and you have copies, we can submit that for the record. Otherwise, identify who you spoke with and the substance of that conversation so that the applicant has the ability to respond to it. if they so choose.
So I have, I read some stuff on Facebook that's, I don't know if I would disclose that.
Okay, so we can go around to each of the board members. If you want to start, that would be fine, and give any ex parte communication.
All right. So I'm looking at the date, and Grant, I'll give this over to you then. On the 28th of February, you had posted a poll and asked the neighbors what they wanted to see. So I went, when this was coming up, I did go back and look, and so that's what this was. You posted a poll. You guys can't hear me? I'm sorry. I may have been turning. Okay. So I had seen on Facebook a poll that Grant had posted on the February 28th, 2022, asking neighbors what he would like for that property to be. And I just want to disclose that and then give it over to Grant, so he has it.
So it'll go in the clerk's record, but we'll go ahead and let them review that. Any other communication? Did you visit the property, anything like that?
No.
Okay. Ms. Broker?
So I haven't had communication, but there's the Facebook page that is just not, there's no direct communication, but it's just reading like a post. There's
Okay.
been no direct communication.
Okay.
Is that, I don't know if that.
Anything on there in particular that you reviewed and read relating to this matter?
There was just posts about the property itself and what was being discussed that would be coming up. So that's pretty much it.
Okay.
It's a open Facebook group. So.
Mr. Johnson, any ex parte communication?
I have no comments.
Okay. Ms. Weiss?
No, I drove by, that's all.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Johnson for paragraph number 6.
Just on your sheet, Mr. Johnson, highlighted number 6 there.
Yes. These proceedings are now called to order. Will the town staff please confirm compliance with the advertising and notice requirements?
Sean Parks, town planner, we can confirm that this hearing was properly advertised.
The town staff will now make its presentation on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Parks and our town attorney who do the presentation. However, before we do that, I know in your packets there are some letters from some of our citizens and also been widely posted on Facebook that this site before you, the Parque Verde site for this conditional use permit, is the Tower Chemical site. That is not a true statement. It is not the Tower Chemical site. That is located on 455 by Publix. So as you look through your packets, you need to disregard that information because it is not accurate information and should not be a consideration in the proceedings tonight. So I just want to make sure that's clear and understood by everybody for fairness for the applicant.
A dump site? Was it a dump site?
I believe it was a local dump site at one time, but is not under any type of DEP regulation or order from DEP that we can find. So it was probably it was the low spot, probably where people dump stuff off, is my understanding. But I will let the applicant answer that. That might be a great question for the applicant who can give you more accurate information than I can. Okay?
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
So there's no chemicals buried below ground, is what you're...
There's no evidence of chemicals that we are aware of as a town. We would have included that in our staff report. What I am stating, the Tower Chemical site is a Superfund site by EPA because it's a really bad site, and that is not this site. It is not a Superfund EPA chemical dump site. It may have been used for trash or something in the past. I don't know what that is. That's really for the applicant to bring in the record, but it's nothing that requires us to go to the EPA and get permission for you guys to do this, as has been stated in some of those letters you've seen in your packets and probably if you read the internet.
So the EPA is not involved in this?
Not at all.
Okay.
EPA is not involved in the site, and again, it is not the Tower Chemical dump site. Okay. Mr. Parks.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Good evening, board
And
members.
if you could pull your mic.
Yep, good evening, board members. For the record, Sean Parks, your town planner. Tonight, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for RV storage. The 15.09 acre parcel is located on Fosgate Road and is within the town limits. Alt key for the record is 3779570. Just make that on the record that we're talking about the parcel that we're talking about. The property is zoned single-family low-density, that's R1L. And you should see this coming up on the figures as well. Again, as Anita has said, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, as these zoning matters always are. And the staff has recommended denial for this request based off of incomplete information, having not enough information to, or an incomplete packet, but also not enough information to make a recommendation for approval. And I will reference the basis of review, which is always what we use. Town staff, the planners and the attorney and the manager use when we're reviewing these applications, in particular, the basis of review, section 10-11 of the code for zoning hearings, in particular quasi-judicial hearings. So I'll reference B. 1, it is not detrimental to the character of the area or is inconsistent with trends of the development in the area. This, of course, the use that is being requested for is considered a commercial use. Doesn't necessarily mean it couldn't be within an R1L, but this is typically a pretty heavy and commercial use. And so you have residential. If you notice on the map, and I don't know if we can go to, is there another map that we can pull up here? Okay. Yeah, okay, all right. So if you'll notice, the nearby areas are R1L as well. So you want to make sure that this use that they're requesting is consistent with the nearby use. This is more of a commercial industrial type use. A lot of other municipalities and counties will look at RV storage as a sort of a light industrial commercial use. So we're looking at the basis of review. So, based off the information we have so far, we have not been able to make a determination that it would be a compatible use with the nearby area. It is consistent, number 3, with the, it is not consistent with the comprehensive plan, specifically policy 1-1.1.4 and policy 1-1.2.1 of the future land use element. And that specifically request that an applicant for this kind of use would submit wetland permits, a wetland line. The applicant has, as you will see in your packet, did submit a survey that showed a wetland line, although we've looked at it, we did not we're ever able to determine that it was verified or approved in the field by FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, as a jurisdictional wetland limit. And then, of course, subsequent to that comes any kind of stormwater permits or water permits, wetland impact permits that the applicant would have to acquire from the state before or in conjunction with a conditional use permit. So we were not able to get that information. Doesn't necessarily mean they don't have that or aren't working on it, but we just didn't, we never saw it, we could never get it, and we were not able to go on site. We have to get permission to do that, to even verify the wetland line that was shown on a survey. Those are your two. Number 4, finally number 4 out of B, will not adversely affect the public interest. It sort of goes back to number 1, and not able to determine, there was some buffering that's referenced in the site plan that was submitted, although the site plan was never a fully engineered plan. So we weren't able to determine what exactly was going to be the landscaping plan, for instance, within the buffer zone as well. So it doesn't mean that maybe at some point they could submit that, but we did not have that information, so thus staff is recommending denial at this point. Available for any questions, and of course, Chair, the applicant appears obviously is here, so you may want to ask if they would like to speak and present their case.
Okay.
I have a question, Sean. Sean, I have a question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How accurate are the GIS maps? If I'm looking at a GIS map for wetlands, how accurate? 5 feet?
GIS maps are they're approximations.
Yeah.
They're not field verified.
But how, can we base anything off of that? The accuracy level?
Sometimes, and based off my experience, sometimes they are within a few feet. A lot of times they're within 10 meters.
Okay.
So oftentimes, it's not unusual that they could be even further off. A lot of times those are based off of flood maps and NWI, National Wetland Inventory maps, soil maps. They can range. You're a good approximation. It's a good tool to know what's out on a site, but just like the state will always require that you get a wetland field delineated, because that's down to within a foot or 2 feet.
Right, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, at this time, we ask the applicant to please come forward. And the applicant may now make a presentation on this matter.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate y'all having us this evening. So my name's Robert Williams. I'm with Lewis, Lawman & Walker. And address is 106 East College Avenue in Tallahassee, Florida. I actually came out of Tarpon Springs today. I'm itinerant, so I kind of get around a little bit in a good way. So, so I'm happy to be here with you today. Actually, it has nothing to do with your case, but I've got a lot of fond memories of Lake County. Got some old friends that live here as well. So you're aware, obviously, that this property is located off of Fosgate Road there. And this particular property is actually pretty far removed, and this is a good map to look at, in fact, this survey. We'll be talking about this one quite a bit. So it's a good bit ways off of Fosgate Road. And so, and I understand Mr. Parks and the evaluation that they've done, particularly with regard to the comprehensive plan and the buffering and screening. One of the ways that, and I think Mr. Parks probably would agree, although I don't want to speak for you, of course, would be that buffering and screening, which would be trees typically, or other methods, but in this case, a lot of trees, is really probably the best way, maybe the only way, to buffer a use that's not residential towards a residential use. What's occurring on the site now, and I can tell you that, and Mr. Grant, Mr. Roberts can verify this as well. What's occurring on the site now is there are some boats being stored there. There's a RV that's being stored there, and there's some other equipment that he owns as part of the nursery that are being stored there. There's no semi-trucks, there's no semi-trailers, there's no big heavy equipment, there's no bulldozers, there's none of those kinds of things back there. And so it really is a residentially kind of, use. Folks will be storing those in their yard if they had a yard big enough, okay? Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about and the actual use that's going on there. And so one of the ways to buffer from residential areas to non-residential type uses like this, and I would agree, this is a non-residential use, whether it's light industrial, whether it's heavy commercial, or however they classify it, it's that conflict that can occur there that you really want to protect against, particularly to your neighborhoods. And one way to do that is through buffering. Fortunately, in this case, this site has a ton of trees around it, and so it's literally impossible to see what's going on there unless you're on site behind there. And so that does give some comfort, hopefully, to the neighborhood and to the town, that it's not going to be a visual eyesore or anything like that, and help with that compatibility aspect. Regarding the one, I did want to mention one thing, and I do appreciate, Mr. Lorena, you mentioning that Tower chemical site. And that is a Superfund site. And in 2005, the EPA actually cleared this particular piece of property as having no soil contamination or anything from that site. And so the way a Superfund site works is you've got this nastiness in the ground, and it can be caused by a number of different things. And this was a bona fide Superfund site, and the first thing that the EPA does is they go looking for whoever might be responsible. And they seek that as far as they need to seek it, and they test ground until they find the edge of where it is. They tested this property, and it's not there. And I actually sent the EPA letter from 2005 to the city earlier today, Ms. Jurasi Garcia Carver, with that letter. And so it's not part of that site, because that would have been identified as a potentially responsible party, and the EPA would have gone after whoever owned that site to clean it up. So this is removed from that site. However, just by mere fact that it's proximate by mere fact that it's been tested, there's always a perception of some sort of blight. In this case, it's just a perceived blight, that it's somehow contaminated when it's not. Now, I also wanted to thank as well, as far as I believe, Commissioner Weiss, you had a question about dumping on the site. Mr. Roberts indicated to me earlier that they had some signs, old photos of dumps closed back from 1976. So it's pretty clear and apparent that at some point in time in the past that it was used as some sort of an informal dump. Unfortunately, that's not really all that rare across the state of Florida, really across the nation. Kind of the edge of town is where folks would dump things they didn't want to otherwise dump. But it does appear to be mostly like C&D material, construction and demolition debris, concrete, and those kinds of things, which makes it difficult to deal with this parcel. Mr. Roberts is really trying to figure out how he can use this parcel in a meaningful way and not have it lie fallow. I think his ultimate goal is to expand his nursery operations fully to encompass the site. This is more of an interim step, I believe. But, you know, he needs to do something with the property back there. So the questions that staff had on this and the specific comments really, I think, lie in two different categories. One, we would submit to you that with the proper buffering and screening, that this is in fact compatible with the residential area surrounding it. Now, I also would agree with staff that a site plan would need to be done and processed through for the full approval of the conditional use, and we'd accept that as a condition so that we could show that buffering and screening and show how that's going to be there in an acceptable level. The conditional use approval process would give us the opportunity to formulate those plans and get to the end on that. One of the parts of what we're dealing with right now is finding what path do we really want to go in, and because we don't want to be a problem to the neighbors, we don't want to be a problem to the town. He wants to have a good business and be a good productive member of the town of Montverde, and so that's his ultimate goal, really and truly. So having said that, we would definitely take that, you know, as a condition to make sure that buffering and screening is there to get that done, and that would of course come with a site plan. We will be working with the Water Management District, and that really brings us to one of the main points that is a legitimate concern of the town, and I want to thank staff as well. I think they've been patient, they've been helpful, and we have no problems or qualms at all with staff, and we do appreciate their efforts on this. With the issues that staff has mentioned with this site relate primarily to two different areas. One is code enforcement, and the other one is with wetlands and environmental. And I'd like to talk about the environmental aspects first. We will be getting with the Water Management District to make sure that we have, if we need an environmental resource permit, that we will obtain one of those. And what that does is Mr. Parks is exactly correct. Typically, when a wetland line is flagged, it's typically done pursuant to Chapter 62-340, Florida Administrative Code, which is a DEP rule that shows where you should have your wetland. The flagging that you see on this survey here around those wetlands was done pursuant to the criteria. I understand that the town hasn't verified that yet. That typically, in this case, I believe, will really be done with the Water Management District and not necessarily DEP. There's some memorandum of agreements that go on with that. So Water Management District kind of steps in their shoes on this. So without getting too far down the weeds on that, but the most important thing to understand is that Mr. Roberts has no intent, no proposal, no intent whatsoever to impact the wetlands directly. He doesn't want to dig them up. He doesn't want to fill them. He doesn't want to change the size and those kinds of things. What Mr. Roberts does want to do is use the uplands that's right out of the wetlands and use that for a beneficial purpose. And so that's why they had the wetlands flagged, to make sure he would stay out of those. So I think we believe we have some more work to do as far as with the Water Management District to obtain that permit, which I think, quite frankly, will answer the questions of what are the impacts to the wetlands and are you staying off of those? Satisfy also, because once the Water Management District, kind of sitting with DEP, would say, yes, you know, you're out of the wetlands and that is the wetland line, they kind of agree on that. If you ever get a chance to go out in the field when they're setting those lines, it's kind of interesting, but But they'll get that line set and agree on it. But we fully believe that it's going to be exactly where this is. And quite frankly, where the wetland's pretty clear, it's easy to see where that wetland line starts and stops. And so of any of the past fill that's been put on the property in the back here in the middle of this property, that was done long before Mr. Roberts obtained the property, and now he's really trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do with this property? Because it can't just lie fallow. We want to put it to a purpose, not necessarily build homes there, maybe have something that's different in the community that the community will need and use as well. And so that's really where the open storage came in with that. And so what we would propose to you tonight is that if the Planning and Zoning Board would elect to go ahead and say, let's with approval, but with some conditions. Make sure we get our ERP permit, or if ERP permit is required by the Water Management District, then of course that we get our site plan approval moving forward. The reticence so far, quite frankly, of Mr. Roberts of going ahead and doing that is because it costs a lot of effort and money to get those things done. And so he's trying to figure out what's the best path forward to use this property. Okay, and so he's struggling with that, and we've been working together on this some to try to figure out what that best path is. And so, however, with the conditions that we're asking for with this conditional use permit, would allow you to say, okay, if you have the right buffering and screening, then you're going to be compatible. That's going to be covered in the site plan. You'll go to the Water Management District. If they say you need an ERP permit, then we'll get an ERP permit, and that'll cover the wetlands and those kinds of things. Once that permitting gets done, it actually handles the second part of this, the problem in the staff notes that we have, and that's that there's a code enforcement violation sitting out there because there's been some activity without permits, and we want to get that solved. That's really why we're here, is to figure out what is the best path forward so we can get right with the city, or the town, I'm sorry, so we can get right with the town and get the code enforcement put behind us. That's ultimately our goal.
Can I ask a quick question of staff? Is that all right
Oh,
to
yeah,
do that now? I'm so sorry.
No
Do you wanna
objections
keep
here.
going? Is that okay?
No objections
I
here.
just want to make sure, I always get a little confused sometimes when we talk conditional use permit, and I always think that's temporary. Does that mean it's permanent use for this, what they're requesting? You know what I mean? Like, just, I want to make sure we're clear on what we're saying with conditional use versus, I know you're not asking for rezoning, but you're asking for conditional use, and does that expire in a certain period of time? Is that, obviously there's conditions, but is that intended to only be as long as this property is used under these conditional uses, that will be forever until it's removed? Is that right?
Yeah, I'll answer it.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, maybe Anita can
and
jump in.
the attorneys, I'm sure, will tell me if I'm wrong, but I know Anita will. But so it's a conditional use. It's something that's out of the ordinary for R1L or any zoning, the CUP. But it, can have conditions to it. You're going to allow it, but it'll have certain conditions. That's how it kind of gets the name. It can run with the owner, the owner of the land. Indefinitely, or there are occasions where you can make it set to a certain period of time.
This one right now is indefinite.
I think this
forever.
was it was their intent to make it run indefinite. Yes,
Until
for them.
For the uses. Okay. So,
Correct.
Yeah, because whenever you hear the term conditional, you can't tell if it's only until a certain period of time, and then it moves over to a different thing, but that's not what this is.
I mean, you can. That
could
it has, and I've seen that.
But
So
we're
are we
only able
saying
to talk-
indefinite for the applicant? Are we saying indefinite
To
for-
be clear, so if the CUP was granted at this point, and either tell me if I'm wrong, there's no time expiration on it. It's
Right.
for them. It's a CUP that does not have an expiration date.
So
You
the
know what I'm
code
asking?
provides that a conditional use permit shall run with the land as long as the conditions of the original conditional use permit are being met.
Irregardless of owner.
Correct.
Yeah, and again, conditions. So you can put conditions on it. Yeah.
And it's an alternative to rezoning the property where it's a use that kind of fits, that could fit into the possible area. where it's at, and we're going to allow this special use, even though it's not a single-family home, because this is R1L. We're going to allow this use under these conditions, and usually those conditions that doesn't harm the neighborhood or the area.
Mr. Chair, that's no problem whatsoever. And quite frankly, Mr. Grant was whispering in my ear, we don't have an objection for a time limit. Again, the idea is not to turn this into a mega boat and RV storage place. That's not, he didn't, as a child, he did not dream that he would have a mega RV and boat storage place. So that's not what this is about. This is about trying to get an interim use really on this property, help satisfy code enforcement, use the property for a beneficial purpose. And so a time limit, we would not be opposed to. It may be very appropriate. Ultimately, and I think I can share this, and you kick me if I shouldn't, ultimately, is to expand the nursery back there in that area and grow plants and provide plants for folks to put in their yards or in the house. And that's really the ultimate use. The other piece of this as well, as you can see on this highlighted area, those are the only two areas in that yellow part there. And it's close.
Can you read those numbers to me, because I can't read them?
Yes, it's 12 and 24.
Okay, thanks.
And I can only read it because I'm right here under it. It's 12 and 24 is kind of an approximation.
12 and 20. 12 and 20, it looks like.
Okay.
We would be also amenable to setting a limit on the number of spaces that we would have as well. This is, again, no structures are, we will take a condition to build no structures and covering over these as well. I mean, this is literally an interim use is what we're asking for here. And so if we wanted to put a limit, upper limit on what we would do there, we would be asking for 40 or 50, I think, if they would fit reasonably. Yes, ma'am.
How many spaces would you like to put in there at this point?
The maximum would be 40 or 50, but right now we only have plans for like 36, 3 dozen, which for the size of the area is a very, very light footprint, quite frankly.
And are there, was the intention, I know that one of the questions in here was the traffic or something. Sorry, I need to switch, put my glasses on, I can't read.
Do you mind if I jump in then?
Probably. I'm sorry.
Can I jump in real quick about the
Yeah,
parking?
go ahead.
So, just to clarify, you said 36 parking? Is that what you said, or 38?
36 is what's
36.
kind of on this thing here that in front of you. Realistically, if it could be as much as 40 or 50, that would be great. But this drawing does have 36 on there. And again, it's an interim type use. Regarding traffic,
Can I ask a quick question about that? I'm sorry, just to kind of, so it can help you tailor your answer.
Ms.
if
Brucker,
that's
you can
okay.
ask me anything you want.
Okay. So based on those numbers or whatever number, the 50 or whatever, was there an intention to have a time limit and when the traffic patterns would come in and out? So like, I'm making this up. I don't know, but I shouldn't answer. I'll let you answer. But was that what you were, was it in there? I'm sorry.
No, 2 things on that, and thank you very much for that, because it's part of the conditions in the ordinance that was drafted that's really kind of probably change after this hearing if we get an approval to move forward. The time limits of, number one, if we would accept a limitation on the number of years that this conditional use permit is valid, so that it would not run with the land and that it would terminate at a time in the future. But on the traffic end of it, we don't want traffic getting there at 5 a.m. and waking everybody up. Typically, with RVs and boats and those kinds of things, I think one boat, Mr. Grant and Mr. Roberts said, they've been there twice in a year. Every couple of months, they come and get their boat and they use it. And no, the boat was there for 2 years.
2 years, never came and got it.
2 years, and then one of the RVs that's there, it's every couple of months. And so a reasonable time frame, waking hours, working hours, I think we'd be happy with that.
We'd be totally, acceptable of that for those things, because we don't want to have midnight pickups and midnight drop-offs. I mean, we were thinking probably, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. type thing.
So I have a question. I guess this is more for the town then. We have in here, page 3, section O, and I may be jumping ahead, and I apologize. You have hours, 6 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Where do we come up with that? Because I'm trying to think of anyone that has a boat on a beautiful Sunday coming back at 6 p.m. Like, is there a reason for that one?
These were comments that were compiled from staff review, so
Okay.
I can't identify who.
No, I was just wondering why we came up
So
with
they-
6 p.m. It just, to be honest, it just
I
seems
just
early to me.
included those, but I don't know if that was your comment, Sean.
Which one are you, which page are you referring to?
Page 3.
Of the resolution.
Yeah, I'm
Of
sorry,
the
yeah.
resolution.
Yeah, section, or subsection O, I guess it is. It's hours. We have, 6
So we have
p.m.
7 a.m. and
6
8
p.m.
to 8 p.m. for Monday through Friday,
Right.
and then between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Saturday, Sunday,
Right, yeah,
is
I'm-
what's in the
Yeah,
resolution.
and I'm sort of referencing the Saturday and Sunday and sort of trying to figure out, I'm just, for the applicant, it seems quite early for someone to come home with a boat. If you're on the lake somewhere fishing on a beautiful Sunday, I'm just curious where we come up with 6 p.m.
If
there's some sort
they
of like
did not
statute or something.
make a request for hours that I'm aware of, then we would have given
That
those
comes from
hours
us,
as
okay.
standard. That's certainly part of to your question about a conditional use. You could make it a different set of hours, longer in the evening or whatever. So that's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Sean.
So with that, I mean, we would be, reasonable restrictions. We understand that. Thank you, Commissioner, for pointing that out, because I think we're down to what's realistic. We don't want to we want people to be able to use it. Summertime in Florida, 9 o'clock in June, still daylight. But we also don't want 3 a.m. somebody out there doing stuff. We don't want that, and we certainly don't want our neighbors putting up with that either. So we're very open to figuring out what would make sense along those lines, if that would be help with
Just
that.
for reference, we live there too, so we don't want to deal with that any more than we have to as well. So we understand that concern.
Yeah, for the record, that's Grant Roberts. So, helping you. See, Sandy, I'm helping you over here. So we're always open to any questions, and Mr. Roberts might want to close this as well. But what we do respectfully request is an approval to go to town council with a recommendation of approval, with the conditions that we make sure that we buffer this thing correctly to avoid conflicts with the neighbors. And we can certainly are happy to work with the town staff to figure out what are the right hours that make sense. And then if there's a time limit that would make y'all comfortable for the long-term durability of the conditional use permit, let's put it this way. Let's say you said no more than 5 years, no more than 7 years. At the end of that term, of that time period, someone may come in and go, hey, we would like to extend this, but we're not entitled to it, because we will have signed, Mr. Roberts will have signed, not entitled to any longer than that. And then it could get revisited. I don't want to ever mislead anyone by saying, I know what's going to happen in the future, because I don't. But it does give you some comfort that it would need to be looked at again if it was appropriate to look at it again at that point in time. It's our intent, Mr. Roberts' intent, that it wouldn't be, that it would then be turned over into a commercial nursery with a retail component that serves this town. That's really what he wants to do.
So, with that, we talked about, you mentioned you want to maybe get up to 50, but right now it's 36. Would you have to build structures to do that, or is it just land? Like, I'm not, because I'm thinking ahead, like, if you were going to build a structure on top of this to house or store or whatever, boats, whatever. I'm thinking of like, how we think of all these storage places that have, where you drive in and kind of go up, and I'm trying to think of what your intentions are with that.
So no structures. All we're
Okay.
trying to do is put
Just land.
like a thin layer of like soil stabilizers
Oh, okay.
to prevent people from getting stuck and when they're parking out there, and preferably lime rock, which is a natural
Okay.
aggregate. and it is semi-permeable, and grass grows through it. So eventually, it'll be just a big grass
Okay,
area.
so it's just
with a
usage of
little
the
bit of
land,
water.
but no buildings.
Yeah,
I
no
just,
buildings
it
at
didn't,
all.
it said something in here about potentially with structures or something, and I was trying to understand if that's because the CUP would allow that, or if their intentions were to do that. So I'm looking at staff, sorry.
If they asked for it, that would be under consideration. If they have not asked for it,
Okay.
then it becomes a specific line in the ordinance if it's approved, that structures are prohibited.
Yeah, if you just, I'm just going so you know what key, the question was page 2 of staff report where it says basis review A, no person shall erect, construct, or alter any building or structure for such conditions until the permit is reviewed by planning and zoning board. So I wasn't sure with that.
That's
Was
right.
saying that we would, you know what I mean? I'm trying to understand like the boundaries of intention and versus
Yeah.
what could you do with the CUP without conversations or whatever.
That means that, an applicant shouldn't be building a building or have a building on it until the conditional use has been granted.
But the
So
conditional.
that's just the code.
That's not this specific,
No,
okay.
it's a recitation of the
Okay,
code.
I got it. I'm with you.
And Mr. Roberts has no intent. He doesn't want to build structures over this area, because the intent is later on to definitely not have them there at all.
Does town have ability to pull this one up? This page?
I don't have it on there,
Okay. Which page?
but I think all the members have it.
Yeah, just reference it into the record so that she can read.
So I'm referencing the zoomed in, the GIS map on this. I don't know if you guys have this or not, if you wanted to look at it.
We do have a copy of that, yes, sir.
I guess the question I have is, when I'm looking at this picture, sorry, I counted 20 vehicles on here, so we're saying 36. I'm just sort of curious where the other 16 would go on that.
Perpendicular. So the area that you're looking at there is the north-south leg of this thing, where the 12 spaces are. The additional would be along that, where it says 24 future potential. That's really what we're talking about there. Quite frankly, this is what, an 18-acre site?
It's 15 acres.
15-acre site. It barely, it is a very low impact as far as coverage.
And we own 4 parcels around this parcel. So we're the majority of the neighbors for this.
Right. But yes, sir, that's.
And real quick, I just add, I think part of the concern with staff, and Sean mentioned an incomplete application, and the applicant alluded to it, is they have not wanted or have not completed a true site plan for us to look and evaluate, because obviously they don't want to spend the money if it doesn't get approved, but on vice versa, staff doesn't have a lot to evaluate what's here. So in evaluating kind of what we have here, the spaces up top, so this is a separate parcel, single family, going back up to ag. Right now our code says there has to be a 25-foot buffer on the front. Well, they have parking spaces showing on this 25-foot buffer, so they need a variance. We require 50 feet no build area around the entire wetland plus the swell. That's not shown because they haven't done the site plan. It's going to require stormwater detention, possibly, which would have to go through St. John's. Where would that go? And they're probably going to hit water at a foot. How big would that have to be of the site, and what would that take it up? Where's the drive lane spaces that are going to go that's going to feed these places, and where will that be in relation to that 50-foot setback? And not necessarily it has to be a professional plan, necessarily by an engineer all the way, but if we had more information, it's possible our recommendation may or may not change, but being we really don't have that information of how it really flows, because there's a possibility by looking at this, they may need multiple variances on top of the CUP, on top of the site plan being turned in. So it's a little bit of a cart before the horse in the staff's opinion, not having the information, but also I respect the fact that site plans cost money and they're going to go through all that and maybe not get it. But from a staff standpoint, that's why you're kind of seeing denial, because we really, where's the actual buffer and how big is the buffer with the trees and what trees are left? It's just, there's not detail here for us to make a recommendation of approval.
So, that's part of what, it's like the chicken egg, like you said.
Correct.
Is there, so if, I'm just thinking of what you have for conditions potentially, if the motion went that way, that they would have to do the site plan ahead of time before the conditional use would be approved? Is that?
Yeah, so this is what to try to boil it down to,
Potentially.
and I appreciate Paul's comments, yeah, because I was just gonna, point out, of course, that the engineer has asked for the site plan to help you determine this. And that is the question, and to kind of boil it down for you, it's, do you have enough information, to determine if this is a compatible use? Because that's the big question, is it compatible? And as I said in my comments earlier, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But we did not get the critical information, the wetland issue, which they started to address, but the site plan that the engineer has asked for as well. We as a frame of reference, some of the other CUPs we've had in the past, and we don't do too many of them, but we've asked them as well, to be fair, for an engineered plan. One was a simple parking space for commercial use. You may remember that one.
Yep.
For just to make sure that it's something that it's reproducible, that if we're not here, somebody down the line is able to say they are holding to what they've agreed to in the CUP, and then also have those issues been addressed, like Paul has said, is there enough of a buffer that's there from off of the wetland line? That's why we needed the wetland line. And as the engineer has asked, some stormwater, and I know those are to be sensitive. Those are, it's not cheap to hire an engineer these days. But it's something that we have asked before, and to help you determine if it meets the condition to grant a CUP, if it's compatible with the surrounding areas.
And so that, I think that's what I'm trying to figure out is, if you say one way or the other, but we don't know all the information, is it possible to put conditions that have to be met, and then they would have to come back with answers before then it officially would be approved? Or is it just one way or the other, like it's a no because we don't have enough information, or is it a yes with conditions, and even those conditions, if they're not met to certain standards, then it would not be approved? I'm trying to figure out here
I'll let Anita jump in, but you are recommending bias with a little more latitude maybe, but
Yeah, so if the conditions were imposed, then they only are allowed to do it if they meet the conditions. Yes. And if they didn't, then it would go away.
Am I good? Are you good? No, I just want to make sure. I didn't want to, you were doing your thing. All right, so again, I'm going to go back to, oh boy, I have all my stuff, here's a mess. The resolution page. And maybe this is me understanding, and I'm not trying to pick on town. I'm really not here. I'm trying to, maybe it's me trying to understand the resolution, because there's a lot of things in here that, quite honestly, tie his hands a little bit. And I understand, and I get what you're saying. Part of me is struggling. It's your property, right? I understand that. But we have in here, maximum weight is 1 ton.
Excuse me, Joe, you mind speaking into your microphone?
I'm sorry. I thought I was. I apologize. Maximum weight is 1 ton in these conditions. That's not a lot, to be honest. Are you guys saying only boats, or are we saying RVs? Because RVs, my math, you can range from 6,000 to 30,000. And the reason I'm asking for that, or the reason I'm asking you guys that, or the town even, is because, quite honestly, as it's written, you would only be, as this right here, you guys would only be allowed for 1 ton.
So the response to that is, we think that 1 ton is way too low, because an RV is going to be well above, my truck's above that, my pickup truck's above that. So 1 ton, we believe is way too low for that. But we don't have a problem with not having semi-trailers, semi-trucks, heavy equipment, those kinds of things. It's basically boats and RVs and that kind of equipment, small trailers and that kind of thing that are, towed behind a regular pickup truck or something like that, maybe. And so we, quite frankly, we had enough stuff stacked up on this one. We're probably going to talk to the town staff about that as we move towards town council.
Okay.
And if I could comment, a lot of these recommendations, I kind of come back is, one, we didn't have a detailed site plan, and two, the applicant didn't provide us with the information, so staff is naturally going to err on the side of being conservative in these recommendations because that information wasn't provided to staff. Ideally, what we would have liked to seen with the CUP application is somewhat of some detail with the site plan, where the parking spaces will go, how are you going to deal with the possible variances that you may need, such as, again, I kind of come through, you got it too close to the property line where it has to be 25 feet off. I think there's going to have to be a site access easement possibly have to be given. I think our code requires it to have a road frontage to an accessible road. So that may require a variance. I mean, we'd have to look into those, but until we kind of have a site plan showing that, then also some detail about, tell us what you want to specifically do with the operation in detail. What are specific hours? What are the specific vehicles that are allowed? What are the weights? And without that information, it's left staff in a position, we have to make a conservative recommendation going forward. So we honestly would really like to have that information to, really
I get that.
give you, if you approve it with these conditions, but it just wasn't there.
I totally get that, but I mean, if you put yourself into his shoes, he's sort of, I mean, this.
It's not staff's job to sit there and create scenarios of, okay, he can use it like this. He should be presenting that to us for a comment back so you guys can make the recommendation. It's not our job to sit here and kind of debate these back and forth. So we're going to always err on the side of conservative of the neighbors and of the demeanor of the properties and what's in the area. Right. And it's a residential area. The residential area doesn't allow heavy commercial trucks. It only allows 3 vehicles parked on residential, so it is a commercial use. So we're going to always err on that side of being conservative and cautious to the neighbors.
Okay. Page 3, section P, you guys still have a typo in there on the parcel IDs. You guys answered my question about parking spaces. I had another question. Actually, no, I'm good. Well, actually, Sean. I didn't want to ask that question. That's why I'm skipping that one. So when I went online, and this is, I don't know who this one was before. So when I went online and I looked up the wetlands, this one, I think I have to enter this one again as well. So if you guys want to take a look, I can show you guys this. This is what the wetlands look like, right, as of right now. From the GIS maps.
Right, and so.
And I know that's what you guys are disputing. I get that part. But.
Well, so the thing is that I don't think we are disputing that, quite frankly. So, okay. and I fully agree with Mr. Parks on this. That wetland map that's either from the National Wetlands Inventory or any other soil maps or yes, ma'am, soil conservation map. Shoot, our funny one.
I got it from the GIS, just so.
Right, and so when you see. As a practitioner in this area, when I see that pop up, I tell my client, you need to get somebody out there to flag those wetlands because they're somewhere out there. But those are not incredibly accurate. And that's why this survey was done. And that's why the wetlands were flagged to make sure that we knew where those were. And quite frankly, they're actually pretty clear of where they are. So so I don't know that there's really a dispute on that.
Let me enter this into evidence so I have that.
Yes,
sir. These are the wetlands. I don't know who I gave this to. So I guess following up on what you had said, and I mean, you sort of see the dilemma, right?
Oh, no.
Chicken and the egg type thing.
The wetland delineation wasn't cheap either.
No,
so let's put it that way. The survey was very expensive to have done after that because of the areas they had to go to.
Yeah, you need to speak a little bit.
So what I was saying is that it wasn't cheap to have him come out. We had a licensed professional come out there. This is what he does for a living. He marked the wetlands. We paid for a surveyor to come back out. After I got that bill, I didn't want to pay, continue going forward with an engineer. I tried to reach out to town regarding the wetland delineation. Kind of didn't get anywhere. It was a little bit, I tried to have a meeting with Sean Parks to have him come out and verify the lines. I wasn't aware that I needed to reach out to FDEP about that. So
So I want to enter one other thing in evidence then, since I'm going down this road. Well, that way I don't have to hold all these papers on my.
No objection from us about entering evidence
So
now.
I went online again, and this is just sort of an overlay of your two properties and also where Mag Terrace was, because I was curious. The Mag Terrace, I'm going to say forest. I don't know, maybe someone can clarify that one, but that's just.
It's like HOA common area.
Oh, okay, I see that.
I was just sort of very curious as to locations, so I did do that. So let me enter this into evidence, which is a map that I created on Google Maps for an overlay. It has your two parcel IDs on it as well. And with that, I am out of questions.
So the only response I have is, thank you for that. But we understand, that's why we're not in here yelling at staff, right? Because they're working hard on this, and we appreciate that. And we understand that we're going to need to provide a site plan, and we understand that we're going to need to locate these so that we don't need a variance. In fact, I don't think we could locate these realistically where the property line's actually located and the topography where we could get that close to the property line. But they can't see that without a site plan, and we understand that. So we understand that burden falls on us.
So in the site plan, would that then have to show the buffers that we keep talking about? Then
Yes.
all that would be part of a formalized site plan? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's all,
So I have one last question. I apologize, everybody.
Yeah. That's what happens when I say
Let me follow up first on Ms. Broker's comments. Yeah, usually our site plans require setbacks, buffers, landscaped areas, the parking areas, the roadway areas, details so we can really see what the end result's going to be. And as you know, you've recently done a site plan for Montverde Academy. You were able to see where the building laid out, where the parking spaces were, things along that line. Yeah.
Okay, so another question I have. So going back to the very beginning, we had discussed in reference to anything under the soil, chemicals or anything like that. I guess, is there any part of this process that we're doing any kind of verification of that? I don't know if that's a town question.
I can answer that.
Okay.
It's their property. If it's contaminated and polluted, then they're going to be responsible for it. Does it pose a health hazard? Probably for this use, no. If they're going to build something, then we might ask that question. The engineer might ask that question. But I mean, if you're getting at, should they go out and do some kind of
No, I'm just concerned that if there is something under the ground, right? Something under,
and
there
could be.
Who would be responsible for that? If we're
They would.
Yeah, so the town's not aware of anything through our research or FDEP. It's not a use that would require a phase 2 boring or anything along that line under any DEP codes that we're aware of.
So, and to dovetail on that as well is that there is a 2005 letter from the EPA, and we probably need to get that put into evidence at some point in time as well. And the EPA specifically came out and tested and screened this property to make sure that it did not have those contaminants in the soil or the groundwater. And more importantly, and I think I agree completely with Mr. Lorino, we're not going to be playing around in the dirt, right? And so with a contaminated site, the danger is that you're using the groundwater and it's going to be spread to somebody else, which is not going to occur here, or that you are excavating soil and exposing people to that soil. And in this situation, that's not part of the
No, I
occurrence.
get that part, but also leading into that question, and I understand you're not going to be digging things up and everything, but however, we're alluding to heavy vehicles, things that potentially would be could be crushed, punctured. That was why I was asking that question. That's why I was asking that.
I understand. And it's not intended to be a junkyard or anything like that. It's for RVs and boats.
And again, just let me jump in and say, with the site plan, they're going to show, thickness of lime rock or asphalt if they're proposing that. A stormwater plan, where to put a berm. As Paul has said, as we've said, any kind of setbacks, the landscaping that might be required for that as well. So, if there's an issue, a red flag about, maybe there could be some contamination on it, then our engineer would, if they're digging 3 or 4 feet into the ground, and then possibly that's a question. But only then would it be a question with what they're intending to do right now, or what we know, no.
Yeah, my concern was just because of the heavy vehicles. That's
Yeah.
sort of it. That was the main.
And that issue may come up if they come back and they show they do have to put a 4-foot deep stormwater pond to make this work, then we would have to, the engineers would work to evaluate that, but that'll be done at administrative level.
Right.
And I'll provide a copy of the letter, the EPA letter. It's dated November 18th, 2005, for the record, since the applicant requested that be part of the record.
So with that, I appreciate your patience. I appreciate staff looking at this. Thank you for hearing us out on what we'd like to do. And we would respectfully request a recommendation of approval to town council with conditions so that we meet these requirements that we're obligated to meet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. At this time, any members of the public who wish to submit relevant information to the Planning and Zoning Commission may come forward and speak. And each person, please identify yourself and state your address for the record.
The masked man here. Yeah. Robert Tomlinson, 16634 Magnolia Terrace. On Ridgewood, there is a road that goes back in there. And the gentleman that lives right next to that road is Chuck. And I personally had a conversation with him. He has been there for about 50 years. And he personally saw Tower Chemical, personally, all right, and I'm saying this, take trucks back there, and that whole road that goes back there is the dump road, all right, and they buried 50-gallon drums back in there. Now, that is a quote from him, and as a past councilman, I'm not making this up, all right, and I had a nice conversation with him. I just wanted you to be aware of that, okay, and they were buried. Okay, thank you.
Is there another?
Larry Contney, 16516 Magnolia Terrace. I'm not, I'm kind of I'm representing by the HOA itself. I don't know if you have a copy of this letter that HOA presented to you. One thing that's mentioned on there is the protection of that property that's adjacent to this 15 acres. And they would like some kind of a bond or something, some kind of guarantee that if any damage occurs to that property, that they're covered. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
You have another gentleman?
Good evening. My name is Donald Lippum, 16533 Pine Timber Avenue. This is something that I've kind of followed as best I can from the outside. We don't have the privilege of having all of the information that you guys have there in your books and that's been compiled by staff. But from the outside, there's a couple of things that I, as a resident, I think want to provide, at least from my perspective. I think he's indicated as best as he can without formal drawings that this site's not visible. It's not going to be visible from Ridgewood. It's not going to be visible from Fosgate. The plants that he has there now, I think, are beneficial. It's a nice look as we're going through the four-way stop before we get to all of that construction of Willow Ridge that is there and of course we can't do anything with. We've talked about traffic, concerns about traffic coming and going. We currently use Top Notch up there by Publix, which was part of Tower Chemical, which they've remediated, and now they're putting all of that back together. But just as an indication, Top Notch actually has an air tank at the exit. And that air tank is designed to help people that only pull their bullet out once a year or every 2 years to inflate their tires before they get on the road. And that tank is used quite often because people just don't do it. The best 2 days of a boat owners, you know, they buy it and when they sell it, they're not in and out of there 8 times a week. So I think traffic is one of those things that truly is going to be extremely limited, and a blip based on the traffic that we're going to have once Fosgate connects over anyway. Traffic back there is going to increase, and I don't think there's going to be any significant impact with those trying to access those few sites that are there. We did talk about the northern boundary having properties on it, which is understandable, but there's a significant buffer there. I think the one thing we didn't talk about was the southern boundary, which just recently went for sale, if I'm looking at that map properly. We've been looking at property quite a bit, and a lot of it's been out in Groveland, and know this process of wetlands and wetland delineation and usage very well. That property, if I'm looking at that right again, south of them went for sale for some stupid amount of money, but you can't do anything with it because of the wetlands that are there. The delineation just shows. And the real estate agent had them come out to do another one to try to demonstrate that there was at least somewhat of a usable parcel there. But it truly wasn't. Those surveys, to his point, are astronomically expensive. And to have that request, and he's met that request, I think is important to realize. I think it went in, the poll, whoever talked about that, it was like 98%. And I looked at that the other day and I thought, okay, of 6 people, it was 198 respondents or something along those lines. It's a much better response rate than we got as far as approval for another big project that's going on in town right now. We harped a lot on formal engineering and landscape plans, and to go through that expense when you're already fighting an uphill battle seems a little bit onerous on the landowner. To have that condition in there that says these are the things that we expect, town's got that. Town has the visioning already. They spent a lot of time doing that. So we know what now houses are supposed to look like. So if his plans for that property meet the town visioning, it seems like that could be one of those conditions that you put in there. But expecting him to have those sunk costs just to come to a board that may or may not even be interested in it, that may or may not change their mind on it, does seem a little bit onerous. We talked about engineering and a parking spot. I'm not an engineer, but I think a commercial property to provide engineered drawings for one parking spot, as opposed to multiple acres that need significant buffers and wetland delineations, I think the financial burden for those two projects is significantly different. So to use a parking lot is just kind of it almost seems as though it's an apple and oranges type of thing. Again, my experience, which is just limited as just a potential buyer, looking at sites with wetlands and other regulations, I can't buy that site knowing there's wetlands there and then just build on it. That's up to me. That's my obligation. And when I disturb or damage those wetlands, that's my financial impact. This site is going to be under extreme scrutiny for the whole lifetime, whatever that may be, if it's the 5 or 7 years that he's looking for. Somebody's going to know if those wetlands got damaged in any way. We know that people are looking at that site, but that's on him as a homeowner to ensure that he doesn't do that. Those fines are assessed to him. And I think when we talk about it being a heavy use and compared to what's there already, as you go down south into town on the other side of the lakes there's a lot of HOAs that have this same parcel set up in an extra lot, that have boats parked in there, that have trailers parked in there, because they don't want them in their community. So if very high-end gated communities can coexist literally on the lot right next door to these houses with no buffer, with no setbacks, with no landscaping and things that go in there, it seems like if those communities of potentially whatever their values are can coexist, why can't we hide this down there? And I think the one last thing, and especially if we're talking about a length of time that it can be utilized, this resident is trying to generate capital so that he can grow a business. He's trying to use land that otherwise doesn't have a benefit to him. So to give him the 5 years, or which seems pretty quick, to be able to generate enough capital on land that otherwise sits, as we said, fallow, but yet to grow it into something else that's beneficial for the town, I mean, it's 5 years. It's his issue to ensure that he doesn't disturb the wetlands. It's not visible as any of us drive in or out of town. From a resident's perspective, one last thought, it would get the boat out of my own side yard. Top notch, when they were going through their Superfund cleanup, you couldn't get in there. Parking spaces are difficult to come by. So there's a high potential that some of these that are sitting around town now would use a site right in our own backyard. It may be beneficial for the town. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? If not, give the applicant a chance to rebuttal.
I almost tripped myself. That would have been a heck of a note. Two things. One, appreciate the thought about in not disputing what Chuck saw about with 55-gallon drums. We don't know, but what we do know and why we had it entered into evidence is that the EPA, when they did their review, they used ground penetrating radar looking for stuff. And so I don't know if anybody in here has ever been involved with a Superfund site cleanup. I've represented clients that have been involved with Superfund cleanup. And I'm telling you, the EPA, they don't leave any rocks that aren't turned over. They look as far as, it's like a dog with a scent. They don't stop until they lose it. They go all the way to the end of it before they stop. And anybody that's in the chain of title, anybody that's even responsible, they're all in the mix to get it cleaned up. Everybody. That's where the lawyers make our money on that deal, because we all fight amongst ourselves as who's going to pay what. That's just the fact of the matter. And so the EPA did look at this site. They did look at those things. Quite frankly, to Mr. Lorena's point, there's nothing there that seems to indicate that you would even want to do any further testing after the EPA has already gone through the site. Regarding the prior dumping and stuff that's been there, it does seem to be construction and demolition debris to the best of our knowledge. Absent the EPA letter, I would have told him, let's take a little deeper dive, but that gave him a lot of comfort with that. And with that, that's we have no other comments. I just wanted to kind of clear that part up because I thought it was significant and important.
Thank you. All right, at this time, it's the staff.
Yeah, I just, and thank you.
Make
just
your final comments.
Sure. So I'll make the final comments with the frame of reference that, the applicants obviously expressed a willingness to work, but, in regards to some of the comments that have been made tonight, this is a CUP process, and as much as this is a property rights, or they try to be property rights friendly community, at the same time, the CUP process and the zoning process is in place to protect everybody else's property rights too. So certainly this is if you were R1L, the applicant was R1L, and they were proposing a home that's already within the allowable zoning use, it would pretty much be guaranteed that they could build a home without, it would be going through a zoning clearance process, and we would just make sure it's building code and setbacks, and then they would be on their way. This is a business use, so certainly, there's a little bit of a higher bar, and I do recognize it is more expensive, and I understand we understand the problem, the predicament that you're in. Certainly, there's some pro forma analysis going into it. You're trying to make some money off the property, well done, but certainly there's a pro forma knowing that there's going to be costs. We're just trying to be fair. We've asked engineering plans of other applicants, so we just didn't want to be unfair. It does sound like you're willing. I don't know what the answer is on that as far as when that's done. That's probably an issue maybe for council as well, whether they have to get their ERP if one's required, stormwater permit if one's required before or after the CUP is issued. I don't know. They can make that a condition, it sounds like. Is that so? Perhaps that's the recommendation, that they get that in and they get the site plan a site plan submitted with, setbacks, stormwater plan, which is probably a berm, with the number of units that you're, parking spaces that you're proposing. So that could probably be done somewhat simply, relatively. I understand that that's, still money and it will still be costly, but again, it helps us make sure that the use, if they feel it's worth recommending approval on, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan does require that those wetlands and your wetland permits be acquired. It really says before, but we're saying concurrently, probably with conditional use permit issuance. So, and I think I've covered everything. And I don't know if that helps you or hurts you.
Okay, well.
In making the decision.
At this time, well, the questions are now closed, and we, as the planning and zoning team, we need to gather and come to deliberation here.
So for me, the issue here is, follow up what Sean said, is property rights, right? That's a huge thing for me. But in effect, we'd be approving one's property rights that could be affecting others without having, on the staff report here, we have four items where they weren't completed. And this is this is a tough one. I mean, because I get what, yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I wish some of this was done, I guess, is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that.
And I don't know if staff can answer more questions or if we're done with that.
Your microphone, please.
I don't know if staff can answer more questions, but based on, there's some conditions that were laid out in a staff report on page 5 through 6, right? I think it's, I know that the recommendation was denial based upon these things, but then there was also, I think, another, am I reading that correctly? That there were also the possibility to have conditions met as a potential way to look at this, another alternative versus no outright, then there's potentially conditions, or just yes with no condition. Those are the ways I'm thinking about. Am I reading that appropriately on possible
Yeah, so the
conditions?
recommendation is denial, but if you do decide to prove it, you prove it with the conditions outlined in the resolution.
And that's what you've listed though on page 5, 7, conditions A through.
I would refer you to look at the conditions in the resolution, starting on page 2 and 3 of the actual resolution. Because if I'm correct, Anita, that would become what the staff would use as the basis.
So then I'm confused on what is page 5 and 6, which says, see, that it says resolution, staff report, but it's.
I think it was
do you
copied
see what
and
I'm saying?
pasted
Yeah,
from
it was
the
probably
resolution.
copy-pasted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. It's
Yeah.
just easier for me to read this way. Sorry.
Got you. I always like to refer, sometimes
Okay.
sometimes when you look at staff reports, they could be some staff reports from prior conversations, and some of those have been released. So the resolution actually has the final conditions that the staff would use to follow. So that's at the very beginning there of that section.
So that is,
Yeah.
that is what you're recommending. So,
If you approve, you'll approve it with those conditions.
Of looking at the resolution
Yes.
is what Paul's saying. You're
Yes.
looking at the staff report,
Yeah, so-
what you've gotten.
but the conditions are in the resolution is what you're telling me. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure.
Yes.
I have not compared the staff
Yeah.
report conditions to the resolution. I think it's a copy and paste, but I
Yeah.
have not read it verbatim.
So we would recommend you look at the resolution for the conditions and not the staff report.
Yes, please.
It sounds to me like you want us to, and I know you need to use your property, I understand that, but it sounds to me like you want us to trust us, we'll do what you're asking us to do. But for me, there are too many unknowns that I feel uncomfortable with. If the staff feels uncomfortable with, I just think there are too many unknowns that you're asking us to just trust us, we'll do it, when we don't have before us the evidence that this is the plan. So I really struggle with that.
That's my issue.
I'm in the same boat.
I'm reading, I'm sorry. I don't see that it's the same, that's why and the reason I'm saying that is, let me just mention the conditions that I read and, I'm trying to see these conditions, I'm sorry. I feel like the person that needs all the help.
Why we're here.
What's the first one?
So here's,
Oh, I
if
was reading, yeah, please do.
Yeah, so here's the resolution, and
Okay.
they're more than likely the same, but you probably need to verify them. The
Oh, yeah,
conditions are
okay,
there.
I was reading
Yeah.
these other resolution up here, so, okay.
And it's probably copy pasted. but
And
sometimes
exactly
we need
what
a
pages they
version.
follow.
So the very first page,
Resolution, the conditions are on page 2 and 3 of the resolution itself.
so like if you
And they
have,
go on to page 4.
so like the first tab, go right to the resolution, and then, because that's the part thank you for that, because now that is, I think, mostly the same.
Yeah, the resolution's, again, that's always what you want to go off of.
Okay.
And it's usually, it's an amalgamation of everything that's been in the staff report. Sometimes, I understand it gets a little confusing because you're getting comments from an engineer, an attorney, and a planner.
Yep.
And we all have different things that we've been asking for or asking for. And, we'll say, hey, let's do this we'll grant it if it's the condition that they submit a site plan. And the attorney will say that maybe they need to show title. I'm just making that up, but,
Yeah.
something like that.
But that's what we do with every applicant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I think
So-
that's what, you're right, like my brain goes to, I can't just, it's hard to just trust somebody, but if you look at these conditions, there's a lot. I mean, if you actually read, which is why I was asking, would a site plan include this? Would a site plan include, answering like, we don't know how the property's gonna be set up, we don't know how, and I was trying to understand if those things, if they were answered and agreed
We
to.
could possibly make some conditions.
And they laid out
Consider.
conditions, as example, these are all the things the applicant would have to meet before they could even move forward with,
Right.
with the conditional use. Like, they couldn't just keep doing what they're doing or whatever they want to do until all the conditions or some of the conditions were met. And that's what I was trying to understand, because, yeah, otherwise it's kind of like, yeah, just move forward and we're hoping that you follow something, but does it have to be all the conditions, or is it up?
Yes, they'll meet all the conditions, and again, if.
There's a lot.
Yeah. If we had the more information, it would probably reduce the conditions.
Yeah, and there's up to the letter U, A to U, so I mean, we're talking like 20.
And the reason we didn't have all the information is because they didn't want to pay.
We don't want to speak for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is a cost to putting a site plan and getting, I'm not speaking for them, but in general, there's a
Yeah.
cost for doing engineering site plan, looking, kind of how the water detention would flow and finishing up the wetland, so it goes through FDUP, so it's, there for us to look at. I mean, there's definitely a cost in all that, and it's
Right, it's a
kind of
lot of
tough.
cost.
It's a small operation scale, but a tough site. That's kind of an expensive site because of the wetlands and stuff. So, I mean, we recognize that, but, that kind of still comes back. It's hard for us to go in. So I do appreciate the predicament they're in, definitely.
So we can't approve it and adjust these conditions. We have to approve it as it's written with these
No,
conditions.
you can change the conditions, you can add conditions, as long as they're reasonably related to what the code provides.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, for instance, you see in the ordinance there, the one ton, you discussed that tonight, so you could change that. You also saw the hours of operation, you could change the hours of operation as well.
Even though the conditions, I go back to sort of what we were talking about before, which is on Yes, it's on the staff report, item 2, 3, 4, I believe 4, stormwater detention or retention wasn't submitted, and I know you, the applicant had covered some of those things, but none of these items were submitted. So, yeah,
Well, that's what I was trying to ask, like, if you put conditions, they have to meet, please tell me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but they have to meet all the conditions before they can move forward, is how you would, I understand.
That's correct. The CUP would not exist, would no longer exist if they don't meet the conditions.
Right, so it's not, when you mention, like, they don't have a site plan, one of the conditions listed says they have to provide a site plan. So even if you were to say tonight, whatever, if everyone agreed or whatever, you know, yes, here's the conditions they have to meet, they can't move forward until those conditions are met. So it's not, that's what I was trying to get my brain around was, well, is it, they keep going and then the conditions are kind of met as they go along, or is it like they have to meet all these conditions or some subset that you decide or we decide, and then it's approved? So it's not like obviously you can say no, I mean, like, that's the option too, we can just say denial, that was one of the recommendations, right, was denial, but then there's also the resolution includes the conditions.
Well, if we denied it, they could always come back.
Right.
With more information.
Right.
That's
So, I mean, I think that would be a better option since there's so many unknowns.
if we
So-
approved it with conditions, he would not, he can't be open for business until all those conditions were met.
Yes, everything you're saying is correct. It would not be, at all be a condition of approval. Not to make this, again, as I joked earlier, I'm sure this isn't helping you, but it's your decision. Do you have enough information? We determined that we didn't get enough information for a recommendation of approval. That's up to you, though. Do you have enough information after hearing testimony and hearing what we've said and getting all your questions answered to move forward with some kind of a recommendation or a denial? Do you come back, whatever?
And just to be clear, if it's a recommendation of denial, it still will move forward to the council for their determination with your recommendation of denial.
Okay.
So repeat that. With denial, it still moves forward to council.
Correct. It does not come back to this board.
Okay.
But
But
it'll move
if-
forward as to council that planning and zoning denied it. Right, okay.
But if we said move forward with these conditions, it still moves forward, but then the council has to, same thing, it's just the recommendation is with conditions.
Correct.
So then let's just, I'm playing this out in my brain. If it goes all the way through and then I'm making this up entirely, if condition F fails for some reason after everything gets approved, then that would be a stop. Like they
Correct.
couldn't continue on.
Correct.
So it is like there's multiple avenues, right? There's approve outright, there's the condition, and then there's denials, how I'm hearing you say all that.
That is correct.
I want to add
So,
on to
so
that.
either way, just clear, it's going to go to council, long as the applicant
Regardless,
wants it
yeah.
to go to council, that it'll go with a recommendation of denial, or a recommendation with the conditions as shown, or a recommendation with amended conditions as you would show fit. The risk for the applicant is if it goes forward with all these conditions, because they're conditions of the unknown, and he can't meet one of them, he can't do what he wants to do, where if those were answered earlier, then obviously the conditions may be different than what appears here. So that's the risk of the applicant of moving forward.
Okay, so if we approve with conditions, it goes to council with those conditions. If the applicant doesn't meet those conditions?
Yeah, so remember, you're just an advisory board to the council, so the ultimate decision is they're looking at for you to do your due diligence, and as the code, look at all the testimony, follow the town code, and make a recommendation to them of how this should proceed.
Just add one thing, or am I out of turn?
Sorry.
Okay.
It's closed, sorry.
Sure, that's all right.
I don't have any further questions.
Pardon?
I don't have any other questions.
Not questions, it's more, no matter what, it's moving forward to council with either the recommendations, denial, recommendation of conditions, or approve. Like, whatever we decide here, it's moving forward regardless of that. So just keep that in the back of our heads, that we can either advise the council and the applicant to say, come back again, or we can say, come back with all these answers.
Mr. Johnson, just having a quick discussion on the sideline here with the applicant. At this time, they would ask that you would table this matter to the planning and zoning meeting next month, and that I think they would like some time to maybe sit down with us to work through some of these conditions and maybe a rough site plan to give us some more clarity, which staff supports that because that's what we've been looking for all along.
Okay, so so we have to file a motion to say.
You would motion the table, then it will come back to you at another meeting. And
So it'll be whole separate packet, whole separate.
It'll potentially, it could be the same, or it probably will change.
Well, what would be the difference in us denying it? Could they still come back? And, I mean, we have postponed this for a year. So, I mean, what would be the consequence if we denied it versus we tabled it to them? Because I want to be fair to them.
Sure, it gives and honestly, some of the delays was out of their control. There was, the past attorney had some medical issues and things go on, so, we recognize that. But it allows us and staff, I mean, it has been going on for a long time. They do have an active code enforcement case that's costing them to do this. But what it does, they've heard the concerns and probably have listened to you guys discuss back and forth, but it allows them to bring a better package together. Ultimately, applicants always would like to go forward with a recommendation of approval going forward because council may have the same concerns you're having. Anita, I will ask you about anything. I mean, I don't know if, generally when applicants ask and staff that, we would recommend that you table that because it is the application, it's the applicant's application and not necessarily the town imposed application. So, we always try to honor that.
I'll make a motion that we table.
Second.
We need a date certain.
If you are able to name a date certain, we can give you when that next council meeting is, or next P&Z is October the 9th. If you table to a date certain, then we don't have to resend public notices at the cost of the applicant. So
Okay.
2 months.
So to the
What would be the November date, Sandy? So if you'll table it to November 13th, 2024, planning and zoning meeting, please.
redo your motion if you would.
November 13th, 2024.
I'll make a motion that we table to November 13th, 2024.
Second.
Yes, please do a roll call.
Board Member Morganelli.
Yes.
Board Member Broker.
Yes.
Board Member Weiss.
Yes.
Board Member Johnson.
Yes.
Alrighty. So next on the agenda is ordinance number 2024-41. It's the comp plan changes.
All right, so, good evening, everybody clears out for the conference.
You're not interested, everybody?
This is just when it gets good. So, how long do we have tonight? Just kidding.
And Sean, just for a point of clarification, I know we have an ordinance in the staff report. So tonight, you're not asking to approve an ordinance. What we thought we would do is bring a initial discussion, let Sean highlight the things. You can go back and read it, then we'll have the true public hearing after it's advertised, because
Right.
yeah.
I was just about to say,
I'm,
yeah.
and I'm going to go in my office and relax. No.
No. No, I was just about to say that.
I wish you would have said that
You don't have to
before I
go
read
to
the
your
whole
office,
thing.
because I don't think we'll be here too long. But I certainly will stay here as long as you want to answer any questions. What we wanted to do is exactly what Paul said. There's an ordinance. That's the ordinance. If it moves forward, that's the actual ordinance. But really, what all this entails is going through 11 or 12 elements, all 12 elements of the comprehensive plan, and updating them. It's a statutory requirement that's come up this past year. We have to change the planning time frame out to 10 years. So we went through the entire comprehensive plan to make sure that statutory, new statutory requirement was met, as well as going through and updating the comprehensive plan to update outdated language, a lot of references to agencies that no longer exist, like Florida Department of Natural Resources hasn't existed in many, many years. Department of Community Affairs hasn't existed in many, many years. So we went through and did a lot of cleanup on that as well. And we did address some, at the same time, a couple of the key issues, such as open space and making sure open space is consistent throughout the comprehensive plan, because we know that's an issue that comes up. What I would suggest is to go through it. It's a lot of pages. You will see everything that's highlighted in yellow is something that staff is proposing to change. So anything highlighted in yellow is a proposed change.
We don't have anything in
Mine's
yellow.
not highlighted.
It's all black and white.
It's black and white.
Oh, okay.
Which made it very fun to
It's
sit
supposed
there
to be
and read.
yellow.
There's strikeouts.
We have the
There's
strikeouts.
If
And we
it's-
have the comments.
If it's struck out, then that means we're getting rid of it. And if it's highlighted, but both should be highlighted. And it should be highlighted as well underneath.
No. I
Okay.
just see.
All right. Well, it's important we make sure that I see somebody's yellow. Tom, is that yours? Is that yours is yellow?
Mm-hmm.
Did
Okay.
you highlight that, Tom?
No.
Oh.
Okay, yeah. So I can prove that we did highlight in yellow, but.
He's the favorite one.
Let's make sure that you get PDF copies of everything that's highlighted, because I thought that we had set it up pretty nicely, where it was
Okay.
highlighted, underlined with new additions, strike through is deletions. And you'll see if there's a comment in the right column, it's us, staff, trying to explain why we got rid of something.
Yep.
Because you might have a question. There was a couple of kind of comments that we added, cute little comments, I guess, like, hooray, we removed this, hooray, because we already met it. It was 10 years ago and we already did this. So you can see, just so you don't think that we're trying to pull something out of there, we put a little comment on there to try to explain things. So
it looks like you use font size 4 in those
I know.
comments.
I was going to ask if we could get it
Yeah.
emailed.
It was
I saw
like-
that. I saw that. I promise you, we wrote it in 14 size font. I mean, I have good eyes, but
Can we have it emailed also?
yeah, we'll get you PDF copies that you can blow up.
That
for
way
sure.
we can look at our big screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It was very
And
challenging.
I apologize for that. I promise you, when you get it PDF, it'll be you'll see the highlights, and it'll be 14, size 12 or 14, and you can blow it up and make it as big as you want.
Okay.
Some of them it's clearly much larger font, and some are just not. And so it might be like older templates or something, but either way.
Well, they're
my
all
eyes
supposed
are
to
bad,
be.
so that's fine.
They should. Yeah, they might. Some of the sizes might. I think I noticed that actually, that they weren't printed out, but.
That's fine.
They all should be same font, because that was another thing we found. Interestingly enough, the comp plan, we found elements that use different kinds of fonts. So they were written at different periods of history through the town's history, and they had different font sizes and we're referencing things a little different. So it should come out as one font, one size, and you will see the changes that we are proposing. So you have lots of good homework to do to read through all 12 elements. It's only a couple hundred pages.
I got questions.
Okay.
I can go if you want.
Whatever. Just my final comment is, just think of a comprehensive plan as a visionary document. It is not to be confused with the land development regulations, land development codes in this case. So we don't. I'm saying this politely. Don't want you to go through and start making a list of things that would normally be in the land development code. Very specific. They are a way to hold the town accountable to a vision. So they're more broad, and statements like may is usually voluntary, not voluntary, but it could happen. But when you see statements like will and shall, those are mandatory as well. So don't get hung up on trying to rewrite a land development code, but you might want some specificity in certain areas and something that we missed, or you want to add something to the town. It's kind of cool. This is the vision document for the town. There's no pretty pictures, although the newer comprehensive plans are starting to add pictures and, plans and ideas. But so it is very dry, but they are, they are goals, objectives, and policies. Goals are very broad. Objectives are a little more specific to meet the goal, and then the policies are more specific. This is how we will meet the objective. And how we will meet the goal is by doing these policies. That's kind of how it works. So, go ahead.
She has less than me, so I'll let her go
No,
first.
Okay.
no, but I mean, honestly, it was hard for me to read just because
Me too.
I was trying to figure out the changes just based on reading it, and so, I mean, bless you. So I mean, I had questions based on what I could figure out was trying to change, just based on reading, and it was more just, I think you did explain it's more like a vision, but if it has a shall statement, help me understand the difference between a shall statement in this versus like land development, you know what I mean? Like, what is I hear shall and I hear must do, but then it's not for land development, so I'm trying to understand.
Anytime, any shall statement, you need to tell me if you feel differently, but a shall, whether it be in the land development code or the comprehensive plan, is mandatory. It means you're going to do it. Will, the statement will, that is also the same thing. A may means it may or may not happen.
I'm sure this will be a very popular question. And this will probably be my only question because I got through so there was one example oh gosh, I don't even know what page I'm on here. Element 4-5. I need my glasses again.
Okay, so
Policy 4-1.4.1. I'm sure everybody. And it was more just I was trying to get through what I could see easily. So if there was, for example, when it says what's struck out, right? It says at the developer applicant's cost connect to the town central sewer system. If there's not a central sewer system, is that kind of I know this is going to be a barn burning question, but I just thought if that's supposed to be a shall, does that mean what if there is no central sewer system, for example? And again, I'm just trying to understand the difference between you see what I'm saying?
Can you repeat the page? Is that
Yeah,
4-2.2.1?
It's policy 4-1.4.1. It says provision of additional facilities. And then at the bottom, it says element 4-5. Gosh, I can't even read that, sorry.
I can't read.
And then it says, do you want me to read it? Sean, are you there? Provision of additional facilities. All development shall be required to have on-site sanitary sewer or septic tank systems operating consistent with deadlines established in the concurrency management system. All new residential plan unit developments, PUD, and subdivisions shall, at the developer applicant's cost, connect to the town central sewer system. But it kind of crossed out a bunch of other things, so I was trying to understand if there is no town central sewer system, does that mean that they have to use the you know what I mean? The shall statement is what I was kind of viewing off of when you said it's required.
Yeah,
So some of that language comes from, I believe it's House Bill 1379, which has to do with the B maps, and they have requirements in there that all towns shall have new developments hooked to central sewer if it's available.
Okay.
And if not, then they will have to do an approved advanced septic or DWTS system. Or you'll see what most developers will do because of the cost, will probably build their own package plant on the development. Which will be regulated by DEP, but I remember that specific language in that House bill.
Okay.
yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm just only now,
Do you
this
see it?
moment, thanks to Sandy getting caught up, so.
It's also on page 8 as well.
And that's probably the only thing I know in the comp plan.
Yeah, we did make the change, and it's to do, so there's flexibility there.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just, okay.
If it's not there, it flips the FDET regulations.
Correct.
Okay,
That's
okay.
right,
Okay.
that's right.
And then, I'm so sorry. I jumped in front of you.
No, I was gonna
And
say,
again,
I'm
I
on the
didn't
same
read
page
that.
as
I
well.
couldn't get through every single thing that I think changed, but what I think I saw was, I'm trying to understand on element 4-23, there's table 5. And it's maximum impervious surface area standards. And so is this just for, the only ones that changed were down at the bottom, like it didn't change kind of the future land use designation, but the only ones that changed were the open space, common conservation open space, and conservation utility open space. Is there, it's definitely much more conservative from is that a shall or a?
No, that is a shall and will do, and that is to match your LDC.
Okay.
That was an inconsistency that we found, and you didn't want somebody using it as a loophole to go.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
go less. So
So,
somewhere
and-
what happened
yeah.
was somewhere in the last 20 years, codes changed, but the comp plan did.
Okay, so when we say common conservation open space, that would be like if you had a subdivision and they had to create a common space versus I'm a single landowner with a piece of land, I'm building a singular home.
That's correct.
That's the, whatever the numbers are
Residential.
there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Kind of would consider open like your green space for the subdivision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to delineate the difference between.
That's
okay,
right.
Thank you. No, I think, I hope.
And you got time, so come back with more questions, for sure.
To follow up with that, so element 4, page 8, it was sort of a follow-up. It's the same thing as far as the town's central sewer system. We have it again listed in there, but we've crossed off the central package plant or treatment system. So something that I saw there, because we don't know what's going on yet with that.
That's for new non-residential development.
Right, okay, but we potentially have that coming with Osgood, right? Am I understanding that correctly? With Osgood, it would be...
That's residential.
Osgood would be under the residential provision that Paul spoke about a moment ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cross that one.
exactly.
Okay. I did read it all, so.
Wow. I'm
I did
impressed.
read this all. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the beginning. Element 1, page 2, there was on table 1, I'll let everybody catch up a little.
For a second here.
Yeah, no worries. Element 1, page 2.
Thank
Yep, there's a chart there. And on the chart, it has future land designation, multifamily high density and duplex district went up. We crossed off 15 and went up to 25. So my question I had was why the increase? And maybe this falls into it. Some of these questions may fall under that shall issue, so if it does.
Same thing, it's required, and that was an inconsistency, so we're making it consistent with 25% throughout.
And that's just for open space, it's not increasing the number of.
That was my
that-
concern,
yeah.
right? That was my concern. I see duplex and
No, I,
likely.
it's a,
That's if somebody's, right, yeah, if you're proposing a duplex, then your open space is 25%.
Has to be 25%, okay.
And
So
if I'm
more
correct,
green
Sean, this
space.
is already in our LDCs, right?
It
The
is, yeah.
25%. So we're bringing the comp plan into matching what the council approved.
It actually referenced 25% somewhere else in the comp plan, in the conservation elements, so we were trying to make it.
Is that true for everything you changed, that it's just
Not
meeting-
everything.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. just
No,
trying to
I
understand.
mean, we wanted to make it consistent 25% throughout, you know.
And I'm sorry, what I meant was all the changes, I was generalizing. Are all the changes trying to be consistent with the land development?
Yeah, pretty
Okay,
much, most
okay.
of them. There's a few that are in there. I made some comments, and we actually got rid of a couple of the policies because they were already achieved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some additional statutes that have passed that require some new elements, I think, in the comp plan recently. There's obviously been the House Bill 1379. There's been a lot of stuff from DEP that now we have to include in our comp plans and plans for sewer and things along that line. So.
Yeah, it's all
Stormwater.
pretty much statutory or making sure that it's consistent with codes. We did add the new elements, but that's been over the last 10 years or so as well.
No, that's fine. I was trying to figure out where I was going next. I have some of these things aren't relevant from the shall statement, I'll say. So element 1, page 24. I sort of noticed on this chart, we have open space, and it dropped from 25% in 2007 to 0% in 2024. I don't know if that was just typo or.
Element 124.
Yeah.
Page 20, you're talking about in the table?
Yeah, the table. It
Okay.
says open space.
Open space. Well, there's an acreage amount.
Yeah, 0% though, on the far right of it. Under 2024.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Percentage total land area, 0%.
And Sean, I think rural residential requires a minimum of 3-acre lot per house, so that's probably why, Sean, but maybe, is that the thinking?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But we can make that more clear. Yeah. I thought that was, the percentage currently in the town that's commercial would be 1.04%.
Oh, yeah.
And there's 40% of the land is work. 7.11% of the property in the town is institutional. Isn't that what that chart is for?
Yeah, it's giving percentages of the different categories.
Based on the intensity and density allowed.
Right. Percentage of total land for 2024. Hold on just a second. So you see that that's actually going down in 2024. Yep, from 2024.
So Sean, why don't you and your team look at that section and take a look, and also see there's a couple typos in there too, and spacings that need to be fixed anyway.
This is the table that was always been in the comp plan. I mean, honestly, you could pull it out.
I don't know how I caught
doesn't
it
really,
just from.
But it had different dates in it, and we were just showing based off of the current GIS how the percentages would change.
Okay. To a layman, it just reads like 0. We have 0% for open space.
Yeah.
So we'll look at that.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I have plenty more. All right. This is V2. I guess V2, page 49. Does that make sense?
Page 49 of the same element?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is page 49 V2 on the bottom.
Yep.
Okay. This one has about the town council declaring a moratorium on development. If we don't meet the certain criteria for roads, I just wanted to sort of get clarification on that one.
So page 49, what line is it? Is it
policy?
1-3 dot, it's right in the middle.
1-3.9.2? All right, well, that is,
I just was curious what it was.
Always been in the comp plan.
Right.
I mean, I didn't change that.
No,
That's
I was just asking you what it was. I
Yeah.
was just curious. That was a curiosity question for me.
Right.
So it's allowing the town council to declare a moratorium so that if there aren't land development code regulations that are consistent with this policy in that interim period between the comp plan getting adopted and the LDCs getting adopted, they could say no growth during this time so we can get our land development code caught up to match the policy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't, it's just standard moratorium. Yeah. I didn't know if you were asking if we should change that or not. That's
No,
not-
some of these were for clarification.
Yeah, okay.
All right, element 2, page 1. And we have this had the roads, the level of service, and 455 was rated D. Is that sort of, like, bad rate, like it's bad rating?
Well, so the ratings of the roads, I mean, that's just the rating of the current rating that it has. Is it bad? I mean, it could have delays on it. Are you asking a question?
I'm putting you on the spot a little, I guess, here.
Yeah, well, I mean, do you mean that I mean, that's a county designation, that level of service for that. You're not asking if, like, the condition of the
No,
asphalt
because
or anything,
we
right?
get further along in here, and there's a section about approving new, and I'll probably get to that at one of these. I don't know which one of these is, but about approving new development if the road levels are less than what we're seeing. If the rating, so I guess we fall to an F, we can't approve anything?
If it fails, then it's not consistent with your comp plan. Right.
Who sets the D?
Well, that
sounds
road,
bad.
455, is probably the county, because it's a county road. That's why you have your traffic analysis, though, when a development application comes in on that. They'll determine based off trip generation, whether you believe them or not sometimes, but it is a different story, but that's what they determine, and whether it could fail the road or not.
On page 2, that's where I was referencing that, but I should have mentioned, I just saw it, but it's at the top up there, review of proposed developments. That's where I was just mentioning about the road level being.
And we take that up, that would take up during concurrency review, yeah.
All right. All right, and we're on element 3, page 2. High density, I circled that one, and we don't have any high density in our town, right? Paul?
Well, I mean, that depends on what high density,
This was,
your definition of high density is.
What section are you at?
element 3, page 2.
I thought when we.
Oh, element 3? Or, I'm sorry, I was on element 2.
I was on 4.
Sorry.
Element, yeah,
I'm trying to go.
I thought a long time ago we said we only had low and medium and no
Right.
high density.
I just wanted to confirm, right? Because we have, it's in here, we crossed off 10 dwelling units per 1 acre, and we made it down to 5 dwelling units to 1 acre, but.
Oh, okay, good question. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, you had 10 units in there per acre. Going off of, so this could be something substantial for you. Going off of previous conversations and discussions and vision over the last 10 years about density being an issue in the town, we changed that from 10 to 5 dwelling units. And also discussions that we've had is, if you're familiar with the Live Local Act, you want to be careful if anybody was going to try to use or claim Live Local Act. If that's the case, they could come in and claim up to 10 units per acre. Was our suggestion was to change it to 5, if nothing else, to protect against Live Local Act concerns.
Currently,
pretty
we
high
don't.
density.
Yeah, currently we don't have anything that would.
Yeah.
I think be a high density besides the institutional, obviously, but.
We don't have, I don't think any of the land in the town has got a
No.
future land use of high density, does it?
I don't remember seeing on the map. I think your max is 4 units to the acre.
So that would be a policy change that it's legislative action and you could, or council could deny if somebody applied for that.
I think 5 is good because it's cutting in half your max. It does give you a little flexibility if somebody ever did do a PUD or something.
And again, it's important to have it because this is the document for the future. So if something did come in the future, you want to have that in there. And you really can't, say, well, why don't we just put it to 2 or 1? You got to be careful I know in Colorado, some of the cities, and it probably hasn't reached here, were getting sued because they were cutting the density so low, they were saying it's discriminating against people from affordable housing. So what you got to be careful of is you at least have that element in there so the possibilities there so you can show we do have that. But the beauty of Montverde is there's not much land that can be annexed anyway where someone's going to come in and do that. So it probably will never come into play, but it's good to have it in there because you never know what, Ferndale may come into play 30 years from now where everybody's fighting to annex that in and, everything changes. So at least you have that policy in place for the future. Fair enough, Sean?
Yeah, exactly. No, and I'm glad you caught that. We actually talked about that a lot internally. So
I know this is your favorite thing to discuss, so I want to make sure I was ready for you here. Element 3, page 4, which was sort of referencing what you just said about Live Local Act. Because this is saying about having adequate sites for affordable housing, which we don't. So I'm assuming at that point the Live Local Act would not apply to us.
That is of course a holdout from the existing comp plan where you always have to address it's by statute. Your comprehensive plan has to address affordable housing in some way. So you have to have statements like that you're going to assure adequate sites are available for affordable housing.
We do have an affordable housing section. I believe Temple and Broad in our code book it references that as affordable housing area.
Yeah.
All right, element 3, page 9.
Okay.
All right, we have I made a note. I put when with a question mark because in policy 3-1.9.3, we crossed off by the month of February, and so there really wasn't anything defined by that. So the question really had was, if we don't define anything, then is it the first of the year? Or when does analyzing housing demands and trends happen? And I'm asking because honestly, for staff, I'm assuming this is going to be a staff situation, and they can at least Paul can schedule around that then. It would make sense.
I mean, if you want to put the date back in there, we just didn't want to be held to the beginning of February. But to that extent,
I was just thinking of staff. That's I was
So as
thinking.
long as it's annually, that's all that
it's
matters.
done annually.
As long as it's annually.
That gives us flexibility.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that was.
Just thinking of you.
Because you're technically, if you don't have it done by February 28th or 29th, then you're out of compliance. But
That's the same question there. I had another date question where the line was crossed off, but I'm going to skip it because it's going to fall in the same thing.
and a date question, if you have.
No, the same thing I just had,
Oh, okay.
but it was another section where we crossed off a time frame and.
Yeah.
I'm actually at your point now with the sewer, by the way. I'm caught up to your sewer stuff here. I'm going to skip over all that. That's wetlands. Apologize, some of this, I made a note, but it's not, I'm going to skip. If anyone else had any questions, feel free.
I think we're going to get the opportunity to look at this again and then come back again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
This is being presented to you tonight. You would not vote on anything tonight. It'll come back and you'll vote on it. Or if you need more questions answered at another hearing.
Well, it just might be easier to have the highlighted version and then come back and then instead of going per person and flipping through the book, just go chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and then, just kind of go about the room. Unless I
That's a-
struggle
I'd like
with.
to ask a few more if I could. Would you,
Sure.
just a few more, if you don't mind. I'll skip over the, I don't have a few more times. Element six, page 1, and we have in here, I'll read it so we can keep going. 6 acres per 1,000 residents for recreation.
Yes.
Are we currently at that point? Because we have more than 1,000 residents right now.
Yeah, the last we analyzed that, that's a level of service, and I did not want to overstep my bounds and come up with a new level of service. But we do meet that. But if you wanted to raise that level of service, you could. But when you do that, obviously you obligate the town to make sure there's more parks. Right, yeah, this is recreation, so yeah.
Okay, I think this is a typo in here. Element 8, page 5.
Element 8, page 5.
And it's the second policy, policy 8-1.1.8. We've crossed off the mayor and for town manager, but then down below, you have the town council shall retain its authority to adopt the recommendations of the town mayor. I think you want to cross that off and put town manager.
Correct. Okay, all right.
And board members, what I might also suggest, because I'm sure everybody's going to go back and look through these again and may have some additional questions. And I'm not sure what the date is that we'll hit this again. Sean, do we have another date? When is this going to come back before P&Z? Do you want to do it the November one? Okay, so.
I just have one more typo.
Yeah, sure, just real quick. So maybe like by November 10th, maybe you can compile your questions, and if on November 10th you can email them to me, then I'll get all those questions to Sean and have him put a memorandum together, kind of with some answers to those questions before the meeting. And maybe he can clarify those or make the changes before the meeting where we do the hearings. So we don't have to make a resolution with a bunch of addendums. And if there are typos and things like that, we could deal with that too. So just a suggestion, if you guys want to do that, that would be great. That would help us through the process. But yeah.
Okay.
You get a quarter for every typo you find, because
I'm rich.
I will be honest, they're probably in there. They're probably in there because it's so old, so the comp plan, and you read through it so many times and you miss.
You're fine.
Yeah. I should probably have my wife read it again. She finds everything. So
I'm terrible
Go
with
Ivy.
spelling, so how I found,
Yeah.
I'm horrible. Element
No,
9, page 15.
And you'll find some. If you're reading through it, you might still find some.
Element 9, page 15. And then I have one after that, and I swear I'm done. I promise, I am done. You can hold me to that. No, these guys are all going to fall asleep out here. Sorry.
What page? Page 15?
Yes, page 15.
So yeah, if you're like me, 1X.
Yeah. Yeah, or 1X, all right. The first one, number 1, the last sentence, you have adequate facility capacity complaint. I think you want compliant in there.
What number is that?
1, under wastewater. What's that?
Capacity. Oh, okay.
Well, I guess it could be. I mean, this, well, yeah.
Compliant. Compliant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 50 cents. 50 cents
I mean, it could be complaint, I guess, but I know it could be complaint, but no, it's, all right.
Will provide adequate facility capacity.
I have a lot of questions in this one, but I'm not going to ask them all. So in element X, as Paul would say, yes, 10.
Element 10?
Yeah, there's a lot, I have a lot in here, but like some of these, like, and I can always send them to you in email, like, we have in here, page 2, ecotourism and sports tourism. There's a lot of things in here. Is this, like, when I'm reading this whole section, this whole chapter, all I'm saying in my head is traffic. That's really what I'm hearing, like when I see all this. And that was just a concern.
Very good.
Sorry, clarify that one more time, what you're reading, that's.
When I read this whole chapter 10, to me, all I'm seeing is this is going to increase traffic tenfold. I mean, I'm exaggerating. All right,
Okay, good
three
question.
X.
This was one of the newer elements. We actually did this not 5 or 7 years ago. Nothing. So what this is trying to do is encourage economic prosperity within the town. So if you were going to have small businesses, they're going to be targeted in these areas: eco-tourism and sports tourism. It doesn't mean that you have to approve the business. They still have to go through a process to meet your comp plan and your code. This is just based off of the vision, what the previous town council went through, because the economic prosperity element now, I think it's actually now required. It wasn't then. Montverde, as usual, was ahead of schedule on stuff like that. They went through the visioning process, and these were some areas that they were going to target for economic prosperity. Does not mean that you should not be construed from any of this that you have to approve that, or they would get out of doing a traffic count, any kind of development standard. This cannot contradict that.
And honestly, I didn't get to that section to comment on it, but we'll look at it, and it's kind of hard because again, part of this is may look down 30, 40 years, even though we're kind of limited on our growth. But
And also in here, it has in here in reference, a lot of this is going to fall on staff. Like there's a whole tourism section in here for staff to do, and again, thinking like staff is.
I do it all.
Yeah, well, you have enough comp time right now. That's the problem.
Well, so what we do is there's an evaluation and appraisal report that's the town is supposed to do every 5 years, and we will incorporate in that what we're doing and what we have missed and not been accountable on that reporting. But we do bring this up. I mean, this we've actually referenced these elements during some development review applications. Archaeological is another one.
Yeah, I saw that. That was cool.
It's been referenced. I mean, we make sure that they are consistent with that element. Yeah.
I do like the high-speed internet one. That's a good one.
It's required, right? Yes.
Yeah, and that actually may be coming soon. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and the tourist is actually a good one in there because a couple decades from now, maybe Lake Apopka will flip and it'll be the premier Bass Lake again, or maybe it will be, the tours of here's what happens when you don't take care of your water tour, so there's opportunities just for recreation and, possibly biking in the future, things along that line, so.
Yeah. That's a lot of what this is. The
I did-
Mountain Scenic Byway.
I did have a question about, I guess it's element 2, page 2, and it talks about, the use of the traffic impact fees for bicycles and pedestrians. I mean, is that's with the town communicating with the county?
Yes.
Is there any way, like when they communicate, is that like a meeting or something where you guys get together, I don't know, 5, however many years apart? Because it'd be so nice to have a bike lane. I know there's a bike trail, but a bike lane.
Sean, how many times have I asked you about that, and
Oh
Fred?
my gosh.
It's a sore subject. I mean, the traffic calming and the complete streets plan is now on the list. I mean, it's been a couple years now, or a year at least, on the county's list to fund, to make those
Because,
improvements.
I mean, I hate to say it, but the cyclists love the area, but they're not gonna use the trail. They're afraid they're gonna hit a little kid, and I get that.
Yeah.
But if there was a
We need
bike
both.
lane, that might help with the congestion because they're gonna come. We have the hills.
Yeah.
I have been asking the county on a regular basis to kind of look into that. The first set is we're kind of least in the loop for funding for a complete street from roundabout to Fosgate. Then there is that other section going up there, and I've asked next time they do the repave if we can look at adding some 4-foot
How,
lanes on there.
How
And impact
often-
fees could possibly be used for that.
yeah, even like with neighborhoods and things like that. How often do they repave like county roads? Repave them? Okay, haha, I'm getting
The
laughed
more
at.
you yell.
I mean, yeah, right now it's when they start, the friction core starts peeling off. That's when it starts.
Yeah.
Oh, good
Gets
Lord.
a lot of attention.
Okay.
But we slowly but surely, the county is changing the way it does that, and they're starting to treat roads now with a treatment that makes it last longer, which would extend resurfacing. But
And just the other day, yesterday, Sean and I, once or twice a month, we meet with the county manager, talk about area concerns, and roads was one of them. And I brought up, even though it's in the county, we all use it, Fosgate Road by the stop sign there. If you go on that, it's a multiple speed bump. And I saw she responded back, but there it is.
yeah, it's by the end of the year.
Yeah, it looks like they got it in the cycle for the program, and they get
Oh.
that Fosgate repaved or part of it repaved. I didn't see if it was the whole road or at least part of it, but so those things will start coming and working through the area. There's just a lot of needs in Lake County, but definitely I try to do my best to advocate for the Montverde, greater Montverde area.
Well, obviously, when the neighborhoods come in and the impact fees come in, that's a good revenue source to modify at that
Agree.
time. But, do you guys have any comments over here? I think we could take our time, regroup, send them to Paul, and then we can pick the topics we kind of want to discuss. It might be a little easier.
Yeah.
It was challenging to read for me.
It is.
Just
No,
the
and
size.
I apologize, because it's supposed to be, if you look at chapter 2, element 2, that's the font and the size of it. That's
Yeah,
all
and I
supposed to be
think
that.
some of the pages just like shrunk.
They
They're-
shrunk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we'll figure
those
that
were,
out.
I was like magnifying glassing, you know, trying to figure
I'm
it
willing to bet
out.
on the PDF, they're probably not that way, but we'll figure it out, and we'll make sure that you get. No,
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
All right,
they
so
are?
We'll make sure that it's this size, that the chapter 2 is the way it's supposed to be.
Okay.
It's because when you have the comments, what happens is the indentation, when you think about the margins.
I bet that's exactly.
That's what happens.
That's exactly
It
what it
automatically
is.
shrinks it to fit a printed page, so that's what happens.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I'd like to thank you all for being
You're
patient
so
with me.
smart, Holly.
Yeah. No, these are all good questions. There's no bad questions, and, and have at it. If you can find typos, please, that's helpful, because there's, they're-
More sets of eyes.
yeah, it's,
The goal is to do it good and do it right, so you don't have to see it multiple times throughout the next couple of years. So we want to just
Yeah.
get a good comp plan, update it, and we can move on. So your eyes are important, so we appreciate them.
Right, with the 10th, getting, any comments emailed over to Paul, correct?
Yeah, try to get them to me by November 1st, if you would.
First?
Yeah, that way they have a couple,
Weeks.
a week or two to kind of get cleaned up, or if you get them a little sooner, that'd be great.
Okay.
So sooner is better if you have a lot of them.
Okay,
but
perfect.
like I said, the first thing I will do is make sure that you get one that's in this size.
Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, so next on the agenda is discussion items. We'll do the town manager updates.
I don't have anything at this time.
Town planner updates?
Nothing to report. I think you did a good job. It's hard to discern a lot of this and go through it, and you asked a lot of good questions with both cases tonight, so I appreciate your time.
I lied. I have a comment. Just to let you know, we will likely have to have hopefully a quick special planning and zoning meeting for one more site plan we need to do for the academy, for their project that's moving forward. I'll have Sandy email you some dates and see if everybody's available, or at least a quorum's available. So it's just the 3 classroom add-ons for the Roberts Gym, which we kind of talked about when they did the inside ones, but staff is just taking us a little bit of time to do the review, so we're kind of holding them up. So we want to make sure we can get them moving forward so they can get that going. So
Okay.
sorry about that.
No problem.
So
Next is town attorney updates. And last is adjournment. Can I get him? Sure.
We heard a petition, I think, on the blue building that's on 9th Street. to be turned into a, I think they were gonna do some kind of.
Cosmetology, something?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did that ever,
Last my understanding, just because with all the conditions they ended up with, they decided it wasn't worth them moving forward with it. That was last I heard. And that was third person, so I didn't talk to the applicant directly.
They've been out there a lot recently.
Yeah, so I think they've been using it for storage and things along that line, but I haven't heard of any actual activity for the manufacturing. So, but if you've seen them out there, I'll check in with them, but.
Okay. I've seen them.
I file a motion that we adjourn.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed?
We're good.